Okay, so get this. I wanted to try to figure out how to explain something, and I think the best way to do that would actually be to just boot up Minecraft to like show this off. Okay, so I've been thinking a while now about how exactly I rate video games. And this might be like a weird way to kind of like describe it, but uh I think this might actually be like one of the better avenues to kind of describe what's going on. So, how about we just grab the three blocks that like best kind of show this off. Okay. So, you know how okay, so we have gold and we have silver and we have bronze. Very very simple like uh three-tiered system when it comes to the way that a lot of people think about it, like first place, second place, third place. Very simple. But the way I've always kind of viewed my system of rating games is a lot different than most because when we are talking about like games, movies, whatever you're rating, it's a lot more important to kind of showcase what exactly what you're talking about when it comes to these kind of things. And I think, man, there's like so many mobs that are showing up right now. Probably should have turned that off. I think this might actually be a good way to kind of show what I mean. Because when we have this three-tiered system like this, some people just think, oh, okay, so like this is good, this is this is mid, this is bad. And I don't really view it that way. I feel like silver is where things are passable. These things have to be criticized and these things have to be acknowledged. The best way to kind of describe it is you have a let's just say you have three video games. Okay. I'm gonna pull up uh let's just say this concept of a video game. Okay? So the game is an FPS that is a multiplayer shooter with RPG mechanics. I have basically described a lot of games to the point where you can't actually figure out what I'm talking about. And in the sort of like visual representation of, like all this kind of stuff, you I would hope that there is more gold than there are any of the other ones, but here's what the reality of that really looks like. Because when you have a system like mine, where you are trying to figure out where like there was a good medium between the two ideas, you have something more like this. You have a massive amount of silver and you have relatively low amounts of both copper, sorry, both gold and bronze on both sides. The problem isn't the fact that there are so few. The fact is that like when you look at like an abundance of things overall on a grand scheme of time, roughly around like 2/3 of everything you look at is consolidated in this like silver. And I would even say that like when we are talking about uh when we are talking about like this kind of thing, like there are edge cases, you know? Like a lot of there is going to be some parts of silver that you might want to call gold, but it's just not there yet. And you have edge cases as well that might be bronze, but is just too plain to really like dive into it too hard. And then after everything is said and done, like whatever is like your highest most thing that is in gold, you have to showcase it. This is like your game of the year. This is your like favorite movie I watched this year. This is the song that I repeated like over and over again. And usually this is just one. This is usually just like a singular item that is uh ex- that is exemplary of like everything you've seen this year. And likewise, over in bronze, there's always going to be one thing that drags down the entire year. You may not try to like interact with certain things, but there's just one massive black mark on the year that makes it look like that. And visualize kind of like this. You kind of understand why I have a problem rating a lot of things. Whether that's the podcast I do, you know, where we're trying to go through all of like uh the Archie Sonic comics. Like I have this need to kind of say like most mainline uh most things I would say that I enjoy are like around like here, you know? This is what I usually like talking about when it comes to like silvers, and that is where like I actually want to like sit down and talk about it, you know. I will always have my like game of the year that like I want to talk about. But like this is the Goldilocks zone of talking about certain things because some people's silver will be other people's like gold, and some people like put it like deep in the bronze. Like I know someone who relatively like recently talked about like their favorites and least favorite games of all time, and they put a game right down here as their like worst game they've ever played of all time to a game that I would actually like put somewhere around like here. You know? It's not even really that bad in the grand scheme of things, but they said that the amount of time and energy that they put into it was not worth it in the end. And I could kind of see that, but that's not worse than made um made on a budget of two coffees within the span of like a month and a half. You know? It was like that's where like you start getting into these like borderline like embarrassments of video games. But they're just like not they're kind of hard to like rate. And it's interesting because like when I, you know, want to talk about like my like favorite things of the year, you have this situation where at some time it's hard to kind of like parse out like what is different about certain things and what is unique about them specifically. And I think this might be a good place to put it, like where I was heavily thinking about my what my game of the year is right now, and my game of the year for 2025 is probably Dispatch, the game from Ad Hoc Studios that is made from like a lot of team members from Telltale, and they're trying to keep that like type of game alive, where it is, you know, they kind of removed the ability to have silence be a choice in that game, which always was like kind of the best part about uh Telltale's The Walking Dead, that there can be moments where it's like, what do you feel about it? And you could just have Lee kind of like not say anything. It'll just shrug and sigh, you know? And then just move on from the point. And sometimes that answer is just as valid as saying yes or no to something. And I really appreciate that. It's like, it's neat. And I think it's kind of important to note that like when people are talking about like it's like, "Oh, what is your like game of the year list?" And they start listing like things off of like what their favorite thing is and and all that kind of stuff. You start realizing that there is a really funny thing that happens. Again, their top 10 game of the year list is in this section. Rarely will you find something that like people universally consider like down here. It is usually like, oh yeah, the common golds where it's like, oh yeah, everyone can see that that's the thing. No one is going to talk about stuff that's like really deep into like bronze, but sometimes people will bring up a random silver that you go, huh, I didn't think about that. It's kind of like when I gave my second place one year to one of the Hyrule Warriors games, and the response to that was, I never really played that game because it's on the Switch, it wasn't running too well, and I said, it was a phenomenal experience going through it, and I really wish people had the ability to play it. Because sometimes it's it's kind of hard to recommend a game that is just not running well. Um, but yeah, it's really funny because like I was talking to someone about like my movie of the year list, which uh not sure like you could always check out my okay. So my movie of the year list is kind of funny because I don't really watch too many movies. I barely watch anime anymore to be honest. But my movie of the year list uh is Reze Arc, which is the Chainsaw Man movie. It is. Oh, hello. For those who know me, I am like I write romance. Like that's my like bread and butter when it comes to what I like to write in fiction. And having a story that is so deeply tied in with the I want to say the methodology of storytelling that that he does in all of Chainsaw Man. Like you start getting to the point where he has to stop tackling just like one genre of fiction. In the movie, to not really spoil too much, like too deep into the plot, the main character basically is dragged along through like several movies on just a on his boss's day off to go see a bunch of movies, and she's sitting there critiquing it going, yeah, none of these movies are worth it. And he's like, "So why are we going to watch the movie?" And she goes, "If I watch 10 movies in a day, at least um at least one of them should be a movie that impacts me." And it's like they watch like a comedy like kung fu movie, they watch like a horror movie, they watch like a bunch of different types of movies overall. And the one that she left the theater basically like talking about was the like simple story about a boy coming back home. And that's the one that she was like, "Yep, all of like going through all that pub crawl was worth it." Not because she found the 10 out of 10 movie, but because she found a gold in this sea of silver. And I think that that's kind of neat. It kind of showcases what I mean. Where it's like you have to wade through so much silver to find any amount of stuff that's on the borderline. But the things that people automatically know are gold are things you're going to be talking about already, you know? And things that don't end up in gold automatically hit bronze because if it's worthy to talk about, it is not silver. You know? Like that's the important part. If it is worthy to talk about, it is not silver. The best way to kind of describe it is that if you were to go to a database, and you were to basically go, okay, get me a random game from the GameCube or Wii era to put into my Wii, and I will play it for a whole afternoon. A lot of those games were shovelware, and it's not like a bad thing to be shovelware. It's just not a thing that people go to. It's like way over here you have things like like what was the game called? Like Battle Blocks or something? Okay, I found it. Unironically, the fact that when I was looking up blue boom blocks, not only did I find out this was critically acclaimed, like it was given a pretty high score from like IGN. It's directed by Steven Spielberg. I did not see that one coming. Very funny. But this game, like for the Wii, imagine, imagine you're just wading through like I didn't want to call it carnival games, but that's like the first one I think of when I think of like games that have little substance. But like shovelware type games, like made for movie like video games, whether those be for the GameCube or the Wii, or just games that just didn't really like ignite any real neurons for some people. And you find this odd party game that was pretty fun to play, and it's just like on the edge, right here. But if you were sitting through like a sea of these games, they might as well be uh like in the middle range of gold, you know? And I'm not even really saying that like a game like this is like bad. I'm saying a game like that is a breaking out of mediocre, you know? Like again, like I'm not saying that silver is bad. I'm saying that silver is this massive block of just static, you know? It's hard to kind of break out of this type of uh this overwhelming just drought of content where sorry, it's not a drought. It's a drought of substance. It's more of a flood of content. Like this massive block, is is full of just like made on a shoestring budget games that might have a good idea but just not implemented well. You have games that might have an interesting like art design or whatnot, but you could definitely tell that it's made for a very certain audience and is going to release for that very certain audience for a very small uh yeah, for that audience on Steam and only really get traction with like a tiny amount of people. And then when you get further down over here, you get games that are just like you get games that are like uh, relatively low essence, you know? Games that are I don't want to I don't want to just dunk on it, but games that I'm gonna just say have the adult content tag on Steam. Like games that you can tell like coding wise was made in like 3 days. But like the majority of the game's art assets were the thing that made it take like 4 months to come out. You know, stuff like that. Like it's a very simple game, has relatively no mechanics to it, and is just there to have the adult content tag on Steam. Like stuff like that is just not worth your time, and is so far down here that it's almost kind of sad to even bring up. Also because yeah, I don't think you would even remotely bring up in casual conversation. Um, a recent so I am a fan of the podcast known as Versus Wolves, and I recommend people go watch it if you want a podcast that I have routinely referred to as the competitive requesting podcast, where basically they tell the other host, "Hey, I want you to experience this. Not just like I want you to vaguely look at this movie or I want you to vaguely like look at the Wikipedia article for a book. Is I want you to have this certain type of experience so we could talk about it in a very organized manner." And I'm trying to figure out like how I described it to my co-host. Oh, here it is. On the podcast, they referred to something on the podcast as the Silent Abyss, where it is this like massive like cluster of very generic content. And I would say that like most things that fall into that silent abyss is this. This right here is that silent abyss. And most of the things that they want to talk about on the podcast is stuff that is silver burgeoning on gold. And sometimes it's not for that other person that they're recommending it to. So it sits in the silver. And the amount of actual silver that they have showcased on that podcast is relatively low. Because the second you want to talk about something, it's not a silver anymore. You know? Again, that's why this whole system is kind of hard to talk about, but is very nuanced, you know? Like, it seems simple at first, where it's like, oh, it's just a scale of like 1 to 5. No, it's something a lot more than that. It's if you want to talk about something, it's already good, or it's already bad, you know? There's this massive block of stuff that I never talk about that just bore me, that is sitting in this like mid silver. Like I could have like spent an hour just ranting about how sorry, not Arc Knights, Arc Raiders. There we go. Arc Raiders is this pretty generic military shooter. And at the Game Awards, it gets like multiplayer of the year, and then everyone kind of just like claps, going, "I guess." And you could say that that's like because of their use of AI for the voice lines, or the world is not inspired enough to feel like that it should be like on the main stage. Why? Because it's right here, you know? It's not like deep into gold, it's right here. It's just fun to play. And it's only really notable because of certain parts of the mechanics, but people have already gone over those mechanics like for years. Well, not years, but like over the time that it's been sitting in beta. And I feel like at the end of the day, when you are trying to showcase the best of what this year has to offer, like it feels like a waste of breath to talk about anything that isn't deep into gold, you know? It's why like I was uh for like half a month now, I was arguing with myself over giving Game of the Year to Expedition 33, a game that I have only put about like 4 hours in total into, but the intro and beginning of the game is so strong that like it was gonna be like in my top five either way. It's such a strong game with such a strong premise that when you actually like sit down, like watch the entire game, like what I had to do, since my computer's kind of on the fritz right now. It's hard for me to play anything right now. It's like if you want to play a game that has amazing storytelling and it is unironically one of those few games that you want to use the non-English dub on, just because there's something more interesting to kind of see a game that is dubbed in French and then subtitled in English. You know, I would recommend playing the game that way. Like, treat the game like it is like one of those like anime games where you're playing it in Japanese because that's its original language. Like that's where I'm kind of sitting at. You know, I'm trying to not talk about the story too much. Expedition 33 ha- kind of hinges upon the impact that is like part of the narrative for that game. Uh, of you not actually seeing it coming to for it to hit a lot harder for you. But yeah, people like when they played it earlier this year, put it not just as their like game of the year, like hard game of the year contender. They were putting in their like top 50 games of all time list, which I don't agree with that. I but I definitely like knew that it was something special when people started talking about it. And I was like, "Oh, this is from like ex Ubisoft devs." And it's like, "Yeah, working for Ubisoft kind of does that to you, doesn't it?" But yeah, it's like this year was filled with a lot of hardship for me personally, but it's nice that like at the end of the year I have like two things to sit like on this platinum pedestal right here that I've decorated as uh they have decorated as diamonds several times, especially like when I post about it online. That like that I at least have two things. I have two things that I'm probably gonna be talking about for years. And that's the important thing. You never want to have your game of the year, your movie of the year, your like whatever of the year be something that you're going to discard at the end of the year. Like, I know so many people that bring this up when it comes to the Oscars. Because like they're like, "Oh, what was the Oscar nominee for like this year?" And then they say some like artsy movie that has absolutely no cultural relevance. And it's like, "Why?" And it's like because someone in the committee was personally involved in the making of this movie, and so that's why it is in contention. And so when they brought it to the rest of the board, they're like, "Oh, this seems like an artsy film. Yeah, we could include this." It's stuff like that. It it's just kind of annoying, to be really honest with you, to constantly see stuff like that. And it's why, like, at the end of the day, like, I like rating things like this, is because it showcases my thought process when it comes to how I rate certain things. Yes, I rate them in a line, and then I basically go like, did I capture everything that I wanted to talk about this year? Okay, cool. I realized that like the ending of the line is somewhere like here. Because if I were to talk about everything I interacted with all year, there's gonna be like two or three things down here in bronze that I just don't want to bring up because it disappointed me. And there's gonna inevitably something that I look at and I grimace with like how much I despise it. And it's not shameful to talk about like the stuff that's down here. It's just not noteworthy. It's stuff that is like here and onwards that is like really important to talk about. And then this ports over here is just as a cautionary tale of what to avoid. Like again, I could rant about what I would actually give right here, but it's not important. This thing right here is the least important part of this whole thing because this is what's sinking down the whole year. This is the thing that needs to be championed. And in a way, it's a very optimistic way of looking at this sort of scale. Anyway, I will talk to all of you later. I'm trying to get back into making more videos because like I've just been like so depressed with everything that I want to just like sit down and talk about things in any sort of like regard. Mostly because my podcasting co-host is still out on maternity leave for like the next like for the next few weeks or so. At least she gets to spend the holidays with her like husband and stuff, but it's just like again, I just want to sit down and talk about stuff like in any sort of regard. I might try to boot up the live stream again and try to do something, but I don't have a way to actually like archive any of the videos. Like just recording this video is taking up the last little amount of storage space that is on my computer right now because I lost an entire like storage drive. So until I find any sort of like remedy for that, I guess like that's it for now. Again, I might make another video just about like what games I've reviewed this year on my Blue Sky account. Um, so yeah, I'll probably do that later. I might actually record it right after this and just let this upload. Anyway, I'll see all of y'all another time. Goodbye, everybody.